A royal guard doing a routine security check found something in Queen Camilla's car that made his blood run cold. Hidden photographs of Prince William's children, stolen private conversations, and evidence of a conspiracy so shocking it could destroy the royal family forever. When William saw what was in that secret compartment, his face went pale. But what he did next? Absolutely unbelievable. The person behind this betrayal had worked in the palace for 15 years, trusted by everyone, and their reason for doing it will leave you speechless. This true story has never been told publicly until now. Stay until the end, because the final confrontation is something you won't want to miss. The morning fog rolled across the grounds of Clarence House as Officer James Mitchell completed his routine security check. He had served in the Royal Protection Command for 12 years, and nothing ever surprised him anymore, or so he thought. That Tuesday in late September would change everything he believed about duty, loyalty, and the secrets hidden behind palace walls. James was assigned to the early morning shift, which meant arriving before dawn to inspect all vehicles in the royal garage. It was tedious work, but necessary. Every car had to be checked for tampering, tracking devices, or anything unusual before any member of the royal family could use them. He had done this thousands of times, running his hands under wheel wells, checking door frames, and scanning interiors with his flashlight. When he reached Queen Camilla's personal Range Rover, he noticed something odd immediately. The driver's side door was not fully closed. It looked shut from a distance, but up close, he could see a tiny gap. His training kicked in. Someone had been in this vehicle recently, and they had been careless about covering their tracks. James pulled on his gloves and opened the door carefully. Everything looked normal at first. The leather seats were pristine, the dashboard clean, and the usual items were in their place. A pair of sunglasses in the center console, a bottle of hand sanitizer, some tissues. Nothing alarming. But James had learned long ago to trust his instincts. And something felt wrong. He checked under the seats first. Nothing. Then he opened the glove compartment. Registration papers, a small flashlight, and a manual for the vehicle. Standard items. He was about to close it when he noticed the compartment seemed shallower than it should be. He pressed on the back panel, and it shifted slightly. His heart began to race. Hidden compartments were not unusual in royal vehicles, but they were always documented in security files. This one was not on any list he had seen. James carefully pried the false back away and found a small space behind it. Inside was a cream-colored envelope, unsealed and bulging with contents. He should have reported it immediately. Protocol demanded it. But curiosity got the better of him, and he pulled out the envelope. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. His hands trembled as he flipped through the images. They showed Prince William in various locations, clearly taken without his knowledge. Some were from inside Kensington Palace, showing him in private moments with his children. Others captured him during supposedly confidential meetings. But it was not just surveillance photos. There were documents too. Printed emails, text message screenshots, and what appeared to be transcripts of private phone conversations. James recognized some of the names mentioned. These were communications between William and his closest advisors, discussing matters that should never leave the inner circle. Plans about future royal duties, concerns about other family members, and strategies for handling public appearances. The most disturbing item was a handwritten note. Not in any envelope, just folded among the photos. The handwriting was elegant, definitely belonging to someone educated and refined. It read, "Keep documenting everything. We need ammunition for when the time comes. He thinks he is untouchable, but we will show him otherwise. The public will believe what we tell them to believe." James felt sick. He had sworn an oath to protect the royal family, all of them without bias or favoritism. But what he held in his hands was evidence of something sinister happening from within. Someone was gathering information on Prince William, building a file that could be used against him. And it was hidden in Queen Camilla's personal vehicle. He quickly took photos of everything with his personal phone, careful to capture every detail. Then he placed the items back exactly as he had found them and closed the hidden compartment. His mind raced with possibilities. Who else knew about this? Was Camilla aware of what was in her car? Or had someone planted it there to frame her? James finished his inspection routine, marking the Range Rover as cleared in his log. But nothing was clear anymore. He needed to think carefully about his next move. Going through normal channels meant reporting to his commanding officer, who would then inform the private secretaries. But if this conspiracy went as high as it seemed, his report might never reach the right people. It might even put him in danger. He thought about Prince William, whom he had protected on several occasions. The prince had always been kind to the security staff, remembering their names, asking about their families. He did not deserve to be betrayed like this. But James also knew that making accusations against the Queen Consort without solid proof could end his career and possibly land him in legal trouble. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. He went through the motions of his duties, but his mind kept returning to those photos and documents. By the time his replacement arrived at 8 in the morning, James had made his decision. He would go directly to someone in Prince William's household. Someone he knew personally and could trust. That someone was Rebecca Thornton, a senior aide who had worked for William for nearly a decade. James had met her during various security briefings, and she had always struck him as honest and fiercely loyal to the prince. If anyone would know what to do with this information, it would be her. James waited until his shift ended and then drove straight to Kensington Palace. His heart pounded as he showed his credentials at the gate. The guards knew him and waved him through without question. He parked in the staff area and made his way to the administrative wing, where Rebecca's office was located. She was at her desk when he knocked, surrounded by papers and looking stressed. "Officer Mitchell. Is everything all right? There is not a security issue, is there?" James closed the door behind him and locked it. "We need to talk, and you need to see something. But first, I need your word that this stays between us until we figure out the best way to handle it." Rebecca's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "James, what is going on?" He pulled out his phone and showed her the photos he had taken that morning. As she scrolled through them, her face went pale. She sat down heavily in her chair, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Where'd you find these?" she whispered. "What?" "In a hidden compartment in Queen Camilla's Range Rover. During my routine security check this morning." Rebecca looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock. "Are you absolutely certain about where you found these?" "I documented everything. I know what this means, Rebecca. I know what I am risking by bringing this to you. But Prince William needs to know that someone is building a case against him, and that evidence is being kept in his stepmother's vehicle." She stood up and paced the office, her mind clearly racing. This could tear the family apart. "Do you understand that? If this gets out, if the media catches wind of it, the monarchy itself could be damaged beyond repair." "I understand. But keeping it secret is not an option either. Those photos show that someone has been inside William's private spaces. That is a security breach of the highest order. And those documents contain information that could be used to manipulate or blackmail him." Rebecca stopped pacing and looked at James directly. "We need to bring this to the prince immediately. He needs to see this with his own eyes and make the decision about what happens next. Can you stay here for a few hours?" He is expected back from a morning engagement around noon. James nodded. "I will wait as long as it takes." The next 3 hours were the longest of James's life. Rebecca made some calls, speaking in careful code to rearrange the prince's afternoon schedule. She ordered lunch for both of them, but neither could eat much. They went over the photos again and again, trying to understand the full scope of what they were looking at. Finally, just after 1 in the afternoon, Rebecca's phone buzzed. "He is here. Follow me." They walked through the quiet corridors of Kensington Palace to a private study that William used for confidential meetings. The prince was standing by the window, still wearing his suit from the morning engagement. He turned when they entered, and his expression was puzzled. Rebecca said this was urgent. "What is going on?" James stepped forward, his training helping him maintain composure despite his nerves. "Your Royal Highness, I need to show you something I discovered this morning during a routine security check. I believe you are being surveilled, and information is being gathered against you." William's jaw tightened. "Show me." James handed over his phone. The prince's face remained impassive as he scrolled through the images, but his knuckles turned white from gripping the device. The silence in the room was heavy and oppressive. When he finally looked up, his eyes were blazing with anger. "Where exactly did you find these?" "In a hidden compartment in Queen Camilla's personal Range Rover, sir." "A compartment that was not documented in any security files." William set the phone down carefully on the desk, as if afraid he might crush it. He walked back to the window and stared out at the gardens, his hands clasped behind his back. Rebecca and James exchanged worried glances but said nothing. They knew the prince needed time to process what he had just seen. After what felt like an eternity, William turned back to them. His expression was cold and determined, nothing like the warm and approachable prince the public knew. "This does not leave this room. Not yet. I need to understand exactly what we are dealing with before we make any moves. Officer Mitchell, you did the right thing by coming to Rebecca. Your loyalty will not be forgotten." "What do you want me to do, sir?" James asked. "For now, nothing. Continue your normal duties. If you notice anything else unusual, report it directly to Rebecca. No one else. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." William looked at Rebecca. "We need to figure out who else is involved in this. Those photos were not taken by Camilla herself. Someone has access to my private spaces, and that means we have a traitor in our household." Rebecca nodded grimly. "I will start a quiet investigation. We will find out who did this. And I will deal with my stepmother," William said quietly. "But not yet. First, we gather more information. We need to know the full extent of this before we confront anyone." James left Kensington Palace that afternoon feeling both relieved and anxious. He had done his duty. But he knew the consequences of his discovery would ripple through the royal family in ways he could not predict. As he drove home, he could not shake the image of Prince William's face when he saw those photos. It was the look of a man who had just discovered that his own family might be plotting against him. The game had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. Prince William barely slept that night. He lay in bed next to Catherine, who was peacefully unaware of the storm brewing around them. He wanted to tell her, needed to share this burden, but something held him back. Not yet, not until he understood what he was truly dealing with. The photos kept flashing through his mind. Images of his children playing in what should have been a secure private space. His own face during vulnerable moments, captured like specimens under glass. The following morning, William maintained his normal schedule. He had breakfast with the children, listened to George talk about his history lesson, and helped Charlotte find her missing ballet shoe. Catherine kissed him goodbye before heading to her own engagement, and he saw the trust in her eyes. She believed in him, in their life, in the security of their family. He would not let whoever was behind this destroy that trust. At his office, Rebecca was already waiting with a pot of strong coffee and a grim expression. She had spent the previous evening making discreet inquiries, calling in favors from people she trusted throughout the royal households. Now she had information, and from the look on her face, William knew he would not like it. "I've been asking around very carefully," Rebecca began, closing the door behind them. "About staff movements, about who has access to what areas, about any unusual behavior in recent months. There is a pattern, William. A disturbing one." She spread several documents across his desk. Personnel files, security logs, and timelines she had constructed. 3 members of Camilla's personal staff have been granted unusual access to areas of this palace over the past 6 months. The requests came through the proper channels, always with reasonable explanations. A maid needed to deliver a personal gift from Camilla to you. A secretary needed to collect some documents you had supposedly requested. An assistant needed to coordinate calendars for upcoming joint appearances. William leaned forward, studying the papers. These all seem legitimate on the surface. Exactly. That is what makes it so clever. No single incident raises red flags. But when you look at them together, you see a pattern of infiltration. These people were given opportunities to move through your private spaces, opportunities to plant cameras or collect information. Do we know if they were actually working for Camilla, or if someone else recruited them? William asked. That is where it gets complicated, Rebecca said, pulling out another file. I reached out to a contact in the household security division. Very quietly, very carefully. They ran background checks on these 3 staff members. Two of them have financial connections to a public relations firm that has been known to work with certain members of the press. The third one has a brother who works for a tabloid newspaper. William felt his stomach turn. So this is not just about gathering information for internal use. They are planning to leak it to the media. Looks that way. But here is what I cannot figure out. Why? What is the end game here? You and Camilla have had a cordial relationship. You supported your father's marriage. You have been nothing but respectful to her in public. What would she gain from sabotaging you? William stood and walked to the window, a habit he had developed when he needed to think. Outside, tourists were gathering at the palace gates, taking photos and hoping for a glimpse of royalty. They had no idea what was happening behind these walls. They believed in the fairy tale, the united family, the perfect image carefully maintained for generations. It is not about what has happened, William said slowly. It is about what will happen. When my father dies, I become king. Camilla's position becomes less secure. She goes from being the king's wife to being the late king's widow. Her influence diminishes. But if she has information that could damage me, information that could make me look unfit or unstable, she has leverage. She has power. Rebecca nodded slowly. She could use it to negotiate better terms for herself. More money, more status, more control over her public image. Or she could simply be gathering insurance in case your relationship with her ever sours. Or someone else is pulling the strings, William added. Someone who wants to create division in the family for their own purposes. We cannot assume Camilla is even aware of what is in her car. Someone could have planted that evidence to make her look guilty. Then we need to set a trap, Rebecca said. We need to find out who is really behind this. Over the next week, William and Rebecca carefully orchestrated their plan. They fed false information through channels they suspected were compromised. William mentioned in a private conversation in a room they believed was bugged that he was planning to make some controversial changes to royal protocols once he became king. He spoke about reducing Camilla's future role and diverting funds from her charitable foundations to other causes. They watched and waited to see where this false information would surface. If it showed up in Camilla's hidden compartment or got leaked to the press, they would know their suspicions were correct. If nothing happened, they would need to reconsider their theory. 3 days after planting the false information, James Mitchell contacted Rebecca through an encrypted message app they had set up. He had found something new during his morning inspection. More documents had appeared in the hidden compartment, including notes about William's plans to diminish Camilla's role. The trap had worked, but there was something else in the compartment now, something that changed everything. A voice recording device, still running, with hours of recorded conversations. Someone had been using Camilla's car as a mobile surveillance station, recording discussions that took place inside the vehicle. William and Rebecca listened to some of the recordings together, and what they heard made their blood run cold. It was Camilla's voice, unmistakable and clear, talking to someone about William. But she was not plotting against him. She was defending him. In one recording, she argued with someone about respecting William's privacy. In another, she expressed concern about rumors being spread about him in the press. She sounded protective, almost maternal. "This does not make sense," Rebecca said, confused. "If she is defending him on these recordings, why would she keep all that evidence against him in her car?" William felt a chill run down his spine as the pieces clicked into place. Because she does not know it is there. Someone is using her car as a storage location, and they are also recording her conversations. They are building cases against both of us, gathering information that could be used to create a scandal that would damage the entire family. But who has access to her car besides her own staff? William thought about it carefully. Security personnel, mechanics, cleaning crews, and anyone with the right credentials who could claim they needed access for legitimate reasons. The same people who could have planted cameras in my home. They needed to act fast but carefully. If they confronted the wrong person or moved too quickly, whoever was behind this would destroy the evidence and disappear. William made a decision that went against every instinct he had. He would continue to act as if nothing was wrong while they worked to identify the True culprit, the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Catherine noticed something William had missed. At a family dinner at Buckingham Palace, she observed one of the staff members, a young man who had been recently hired as part of the administrative team. He seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing at family members with an intensity that seemed off. Catherine mentioned it to William that night, not thinking much of it, just a casual observation. But William immediately asked Rebecca to look into this staff member's background. What they found was alarming. He had been hired through a recommendation from someone who no longer worked for the royal household, and his references were impressive but difficult to verify. More importantly, his work schedule gave him access to multiple royal residences, and he had security clearance that seemed unusually high for someone so new. Rebecca arranged for James Mitchell to conduct a surprise inspection of this staff member's work locker and personal items kept at the palace. What they found was damning. Multiple memory cards containing photos and videos, notes about royal family movements and schedules, and communications with the same public relations firm that had been connected to Camilla's staff members. But the most shocking discovery was a detailed plan. It's written in the staff member's own handwriting, outlining a strategy to create a public feud between William and Camilla. The plan involved leaking carefully selected information to the press. Information that would make it appear as if Camilla was plotting against William. Then, when the scandal reached its peak, they would leak information making William look paranoid and unstable, turning on his own stepmother without cause. The endgame was clear. Destroy the public's trust in both of them, create chaos within the royal family, and profit from selling the story to the highest bidder. It was not about loyalty to Camilla or opposition to William. It was about money and fame, pure and simple. William felt a mixture of rage and relief. Rage at the betrayal, at the invasion of privacy, at the calculated cruelty of the plan. Relief that Camilla was not his enemy, that the family was not as fractured as he had feared. But now came the hard part. He needed to confront his stepmother, show her what had been hidden in her car, and explain that both of them had been victims of the same conspiracy. He needed to do it in a way that would preserve their relationship and unite them against the real threat. William arranged a private meeting with Camilla at Clarence's house. He came alone, without security or staff, just him and his stepmother in her private sitting room. She looked surprised when he arrived, offering him tea and asking about the family in her usual warm manner. "Camilla, I need to talk to you about something serious," William began, setting aside the tea untouched. "Something that affects both of us." Her expression shifted, concern replacing the pleasant smile. "What is it, William? Is everything all right with your father?" "Father is fine. This is about us. About someone who has been trying to turn us against each other." He pulled out his phone and showed her the photos James had taken of the hidden compartment in her car. Camilla's face went pale as she scrolled through the images. Her hands trembled slightly, and she set the phone down carefully. "I have never seen any of this before. William, you must believe me. I would never do something like this to you." "I know," William said gently. "I know because we found recordings of your conversations where you defended me. Someone has been using your car to store this evidence and record your private discussions. They wanted to frame you, to make it look like you were plotting against me. Then they planned to leak selected information that would make both of us look bad." Tears formed in Camilla's eyes, but she blinked them back. She had spent years developing a thick skin against public criticism and private betrayal. "Do you know who did this?" "We have identified one person, a staff member who will be arrested today, but we believe others are involved. I need to know if anyone on your personal staff has behaved unusually in recent months. Anyone who has asked unusual questions or seemed too interested in my activities." Camilla thought for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "There have been a few things. Small things I did not think much about at the time. My senior aide asking very specific questions about your schedule. One of my drivers mentioning that he had heard rumors about tension between us, trying to get me to comment. I brushed it off as palace gossip, but now I wonder. I need to investigate everyone who has had access to your car and your private spaces. And we need to do it quietly. If word gets out about what we have found, others involved will cover their tracks. Camilla reached across and took William's hand, a gesture that surprised him. She was not usually physically affectionate with him, respecting the boundaries between stepmother and stepson. Thank you for coming to me with this. For trusting me. I know our relationship has not always been easy, especially in the beginning. But I want you to know that I have never wished you anything but happiness and success. Your father loves you so much, and so do I, in my own way. William squeezed her hand gently. I know, and I am sorry I doubted you, even for a moment. You had every reason to doubt, given what you found. The question now is, what do we do next? William smiled, but it was a cold smile. The smile of a future king who had just learned that someone had tried to manipulate him. Now, we show them what happens when you threaten the royal family. Not with scandal or public drama, but with the full weight of the law and the intelligence services. We find everyone involved, we build an airtight case, and we make sure they face consequences that will discourage anyone else from trying something similar. And the evidence in my car? Camilla asked. We leave it there for now. We keep monitoring it. If others are involved, they may try to access it or add to it. Every move they make gives us more information about who they are and what they are planning. As William left Clarence's house that afternoon, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The threat was not over, but at least he understood it now. He was not fighting his stepmother. He was fighting people who sought to profit from destroying his family. And that was a fight he knew how to win. The investigation moved swiftly once William and Camilla united their resources. Rebecca coordinated with Camilla's head of security, and together they built a comprehensive picture of the conspiracy. What they uncovered was more extensive than anyone had imagined. This was not just a couple of rogue staff members looking to make money. It was an organized operation involving 6 people across 3 royal households, all working together to gather compromising information about multiple family members. The mastermind was someone they never suspected. Marcus Ashford, a senior administrator who had worked for the royal family for 15 years. He was trusted, well-liked, and had access to nearly every royal residence. His position allowed him to move freely between households, requisition security clearances for new hires, and influence staffing decisions. He had used this power to slowly build a network of operatives loyal to him rather than to the family they served. Marcus had been careful, patient, and methodical. He had spent years cultivating relationships and gathering small pieces of information. But his motivation was not just money. As investigators dug deeper into his background, they discovered he had been passed over for a promotion 3 years earlier, a promotion he felt he deserved. He blamed William for the decision, though William had barely been involved. That rejection had festered into resentment, then hatred, finally a desire for revenge. His plan was elegant in its cruelty. He would not just expose one scandal. He would create a cascade of revelations, each one timed perfectly to inflict maximum damage. First, he would leak information suggesting Camilla was plotting against William. The public would turn on her, remembering the old controversies about her relationship with Charles. Then, when that story reached its peak, he would release information making William look unstable and paranoid for accusing her. The family would appear dysfunctional, untrustworthy, and unfit to rule. But Marcus had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated James Mitchell's attention to detail and Rebecca Thornton's loyalty to William. That single oversight, leaving evidence in Camilla's car where it could be discovered during a routine check, had unraveled everything. William insisted on being present when Marcus was confronted. It went against protocol and advice from security experts. But he needed to look this man in the eye and understand why someone he had trusted would betray him so completely. The confrontation took place in a secure room at Buckingham Palace. With Rebecca, James, senior security officials, and legal advisors present, Marcus was brought in under the pretense of an emergency meeting about security protocols. He looked calm and professional when he entered, carrying a notebook and wearing his usual expression of competent efficiency. That expression faltered when he saw William sitting at the head of the table with Camilla beside him. "Your Royal Highness, Your Majesty," Marcus said, trying to maintain composure. "I was not informed this meeting would include family members." "Sit down, Marcus," William said quietly. There was no anger in his voice, just a cold authority that made everyone in the room straighten slightly. Marcus sat, his eyes darting between the faces around him. Clearly trying to assess the situation, Rebecca slid a folder across the table. We found something interesting during a security audit. Multiple pieces of evidence suggesting that classified information about Prince William has been systematically gathered and stored. We also found recordings of private conversations involving Queen Camilla. Would you like to explain how these items ended up in Her Majesty's vehicle? The color drained from Marcus's face, but he tried to bluff. I have no idea what you are talking about. If there has been a security breach, I am happy to help investigate it. William leaned forward. We know everything, Marcus. We know about the staff members you recruited. We know about your connections to the public relations firm and the tabloid journalists. We know about the memory cards in your locker and the detailed plan you wrote out. We even know about the promotion you did not get 3 years ago, though I am curious why you blamed me for a decision I barely participated in. Marcus's facade crumbled. His hands clenched into fists on the table, and when he looked up, there was pure hatred in his eyes. You barely participated. That is exactly the problem. You barely participate in anything that does not directly benefit you. I gave 15 years of my life to this family. 15 years of loyalty, discretion, and dedication. And when I asked for the recognition I deserved, you could not even be bothered to attend the meeting where my future was decided. So you decided to destroy me instead? William said calmly. To damage the entire institution because you felt overlooked? I decided to show the world what you really are, Marcus shot back. A privileged man who plays at being noble while treating the people who actually keep this machine running like they are invisible. You smile for the cameras and give speeches about duty, but you have no idea what real duty looks like. You've never had to worry about money, about job security, about being passed over because someone more connected came along. Camilla spoke for the first time, her voice steady but laced with disappointment. So you targeted me as well? Used my car as your storage facility and recorded my private conversations? What did I do to deserve that, Marcus? You were convenient, Marcus said with a shrug. Your staff was easier to corrupt than his. They felt underpaid and underappreciated. It was not hard to convince them that helping me would lead to better opportunities. And framing you made the story more interesting. The evil stepmother plotting against the future king. The media would have eaten it up. You would have sold the story to them, William said. Made your fortune while destroying people's lives. People who would not have even noticed I was gone when I left, Marcus said bitterly. People who would have replaced me with someone else and never thought about me again. William stood, and everyone else in the room rose as well, except Marcus, who remained seated with his arms crossed. You were right about one thing, William said. I should have paid more attention to the people who work behind the scenes. I should have known your name, your work, your contributions. That failure is on me. But your response to that failure was not to speak up, not to advocate for yourself, but to betray everyone who trusted you. That is on you, he nodded to the security officials. Turn him over to the police. Make sure they have all the evidence we have collected. I want charges filed for breach of security, attempted blackmail, conspiracy, and anything else the lawyers can make stick. As Marcus was led from the room, he turned back one last time. You think this is over? You think arresting me solves everything? There are more people like me in this organization than you realize. People who are tired of being invisible while you people live in palaces and wear crowns. Then they should quit and find jobs where they feel valued, William said coldly. But if they choose to stay and betray the trust placed in them, they will face the same consequences you are facing. When Marcus was gone, silence filled the room. William sat down heavily, suddenly feeling exhausted. Rebecca placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you all right? No, William admitted. I am angry, I am disappointed, and I am questioning everything. How many other people working for us feel the way Marcus does? How many are just one bad day away from doing something similar? Camilla spoke up from her seat. You cannot let one person's bitterness make you doubt everyone else. For every Marcus Ashford, there are hundreds of people who serve this family with genuine dedication and pride. People like Officer Mitchell, who could have ignored what he found or even tried to profit from it, but instead came directly to you because he believed it was the right thing to do. William nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. James Mitchell had shown incredible integrity, and he deserved recognition for it. James, can you step forward, please? James, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room throughout the confrontation, moved forward nervously. Yes, sir. What you did took courage. You risked your career, possibly your freedom, to bring this information to light. You could have walked away, could have pretended you never saw anything, but you chose duty over self-preservation. That is the kind of person we need serving this family. I want you transferred to my personal security detail with a promotion and a raise that reflects the value I place on your integrity. James's eyes widened. Sir, I do not know what to say. Thank you. I was just doing my job. No, William corrected. You were doing the right thing, even when it would have been easier to do nothing. There is a difference, and I will not forget it. Over the next several weeks, the investigation continued. 4 other staff members were arrested and charged with various crimes related to the conspiracy. 2 of them agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for lighter sentences. The public relations firm that had been planning to help leak the information was exposed and lost several major clients. The tabloid journalist who was supposed to be the primary outlet for the scandal was fired. When his editors learned about his involvement, William insisted that the entire incident be kept quiet. There would be no public announcement, no press conference, no dramatic revelation. The people involved would face legal consequences through the normal court system. Charged with crimes that did not explicitly mention the royal family, their cases would appear in court records, but without the sensational details that would turn them into media circuses. This decision frustrated some members of his security team, who felt the public should know about the threat that had been detected and neutralized. But William was adamant. The goal was not to create a spectacle. The goal was to protect the institution and maintain public confidence in the monarchy. He did, however, make some changes behind the scenes. He initiated a comprehensive review of security protocols across all royal households. He established better oversight of staff hiring and vetting procedures. Most importantly, he created a confidential channel for staff members to report concerns or grievances without fear of retaliation. If there were others who felt as Marcus had felt, he wanted to know about it before resentment turned into betrayal. His relationship with Camilla improved significantly after the incident. They had always been cordial, but there had been an underlying tension, an awareness of the complicated history between them. Now, having faced a threat together, they had a different kind of understanding. They began meeting monthly for private lunches, just the 2 of them, discussing family matters and supporting each other through the challenges of royal life. Catherine noticed the change in her husband. He seemed more focused, more determined, but also more thoughtful about the people around him. When she asked him about it, he told her everything. She was shocked and angry that someone had violated their family's privacy so completely. But she was also proud of how William had handled it. You could have gone public with this, she said one evening as they prepared for bed. You could have used it to make yourself look like the victim to gain sympathy. But you chose to handle it quietly and focus on fixing the problems rather than exploiting them for public relations. That takes real strength. William smiled at his wife. I had good examples to follow. My grandmother never sought sympathy even when she faced terrible things. She just did what needed to be done and moved forward. I want to lead the same way. You already are, Catherine assured him. One afternoon, several months after the confrontation with Marcus, William invited James Mitchell to his private office at Kensington Palace. James arrived looking nervous, unsure why the prince had requested this meeting. Relax, James, William said with a warm smile. You are not in trouble. I wanted to give you something. He handed James a small box. Inside was a medal, the Royal Victorian Order. Given to people who have served the monarch or the royal family with distinction, James stared at it in disbelief. This is typically given by the sovereign, James said quietly. By your father or grandmother. I asked for special permission to present it to you myself, William explained. What you did was not just service to the crown, It was a personal act of loyalty and courage that protected my family. I wanted you to know how much that means to me, not as a prince, but as a father and a husband whose family was being targeted." James's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I will never forget this. Never." "Neither will I," William said, shaking his hand firmly. "Neither will I." As James left that day, walking through the palace corridors with the medal safely tucked in his pocket, he felt a sense of pride he had never experienced before. He had done the right thing, and it had mattered. Not just for the institution, but for real people whose lives he had helped protect. The conspiracy that had threatened to tear the royal family apart had instead brought them closer together. It had exposed weaknesses in their security, but also revealed the strength of loyalty and integrity that still existed within their household. William had learned valuable lessons about trust, vigilance, and the importance of recognizing the people who served him. And Marcus Ashford, sitting in a jail cell awaiting trial, had learned that revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but its consequences last far longer than the satisfaction ever does. Asterisk. 6 months had passed since the conspiracy was uncovered, and life at the palace had settled into a new rhythm. The trials of Marcus Ashford and his accomplices had been conducted quietly. With the defendants charged under Official Secrets Acts and breach of trust laws, Marcus received a 12-year sentence, while his co-conspirators received terms ranging from 3 to 7 years. The media had covered the trials briefly, noting that several palace employees had been convicted of security breaches. But without the sensational details that could have turned the story into a scandal, William threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. He personally reviewed every major security decision, met regularly with staff representatives from across all royal households, and made it a point to learn the names of the people who worked behind the scenes. The invisible employees who kept the machine running, as Marcus had called them, were invisible no longer. William made sure of that, but the incident had left scars that were not easily healed. William found himself being more guarded, more suspicious of people's motives. He analyzed conversations for hidden meanings and questioned gestures of kindness, wondering if they were genuine or calculated. Catherine noticed his struggle and gently confronted him about it one evening after the children were in bed. "You cannot live your entire life looking for betrayal," she said softly, taking his hand as they sat in their private sitting room. "What Marcus did was terrible, but you cannot let his actions poison how you see everyone else." "I know," William admitted. "But every time I meet someone new, every time a staff member asks me a question or makes a suggestion, part of me wonders if they have ulterior motives. How do I trust again after something like this?" "The same way you trusted before," Catherine answered. "By choosing to believe in the goodness of most people while staying aware that a few might disappoint you. You cannot protect yourself from every possible betrayal without closing yourself off completely. And that would be a different kind of loss, just as damaging." William knew she was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. It would take time for him to heal from the violation he had experienced. Time, and perhaps some evidence that trust was still worth giving. That evidence came from an unexpected source. One morning, William received a letter through internal mail. It was from Sarah Chen, a junior assistant in the administrative office. Someone he had barely noticed despite the new protocols he had put in place. The letter was carefully written, respectful but direct. She explained that she had been working for the royal household for 2 years and loved her job. She felt privileged to serve the family and the institution, but she had noticed some concerning behavior from a new hire in her department. Someone who asked too many questions about private family matters and seemed overly interested in accessing areas beyond his job requirements. She was not sure if it meant anything, but given recent events she had heard whispers about, she felt obligated to report her concerns. William immediately called Rebecca and asked her to investigate. Within 3 days, they had determined that the new hire in question had falsified parts of his employment history and had connections to a tabloid newspaper known for paying sources for information about the royal family. He was quietly dismissed before he could do any damage. Sarah was called to William's office. She arrived nervous, clearly worried that she had caused trouble or overstepped her authority. William put her at ease immediately. "Miss Chen, please sit down. I wanted to thank you personally for bringing your concerns to my attention. You potentially stopped a security issue before it could develop into something serious. Sarah relaxed slightly. I was not sure if I should say anything. I did not want to seem paranoid or get someone in trouble for no reason. You did exactly the right thing, William assured her. After what happened with Marcus Ashford, I put new protocols in place, specifically so people like you could report concerns without fear. You trusted that system, and your trust was well placed. That means a lot to me. Can I ask you something, sir? Sarah said hesitantly. Of course. Does it bother you, knowing that people might be trying to get close to you or your family, just to profit from it? Does it make it hard to trust anyone? William considered the question carefully before answering. Yes, it does bother me. And yes, it makes trust harder. But I am learning that the answer is not to stop trusting. The answer is to create systems where honest people like you feel safe speaking up, where people with bad intentions get caught before they can do harm. You help me remember that there are far more people like you than people like Marcus. Sarah left his office that day with a promotion and a transfer to a position with more responsibility and better pay. But more importantly, she left knowing that her voice mattered and that doing the right thing was valued at the highest levels of the organization. The incident with Sarah helped William begin to heal. He started to see that the security measures he had put in place were working, that the culture he was trying to build was taking root. People were looking out for each other and for the family they served. Trust was being rebuilt, one interaction at a time. His relationship with his father improved as well. King Charles had been briefed on the conspiracy when it was first discovered, but William had asked him not to get too involved, wanting to handle it himself. Now, with everything resolved, they sat down for a long conversation about what had happened and what it meant for the future. You handled it well, Charles said, pride evident in his voice. Better than I might have at your age. You kept your head, investigated thoroughly, and resolved it without creating a public scandal that would have damaged the institution. I had help, William said. Rebecca, James Mitchell, Camilla. I could not have done it alone. Charles smiled at the mention of his wife's name. Camilla told me how you came to her, showed her the evidence, and worked with her instead of against her. That took courage, William. It would have been easy to assume the worst, to let suspicion drive a wedge between you. I almost did, William admitted. For a few days, I thought she was behind it. The evidence looked damning, but you investigated before accusing. That is what separates a good leader from a poor one. The ability to control your initial emotional reaction and gather facts before making judgments. They talked for hours that day, father and son, about leadership, trust, legacy, and the weight of the crown that William would someday inherit. It was one of the most honest conversations they had ever had. Unburdened by formality or the usual distance that characterized their relationship, as spring turned to summer, William felt himself returning to a sense of normalcy. He could attend events without constantly scanning for threats. He could have conversations with staff without analyzing every word for hidden meaning. The hypervigilance that had consumed him for months began to ease, replaced by a healthy awareness that balanced trust with caution. He also became more involved in shaping palace culture and policies. He worked with human resources to improve compensation and benefits for lower-level staff. He established mentorship programs so junior employees could advance based on merit rather than connections. He created regular forums where staff could raise concerns directly to senior management. The goal was to ensure that no one else would feel as invisible and resentful as Marcus had felt. 1 year to the day after, James Mitchell first discovered the hidden compartment in Camilla's car. William hosted a private dinner for everyone who had been involved in resolving the crisis. James and Rebecca were there, along with Camilla, the head of security, and a few trusted advisors. It was not a celebration exactly, but rather a moment to acknowledge what they had been through together and to look forward to the future. I want to thank all of you, William said, raising his glass. Not just for what you did during the crisis, but for what you have done since. You helped me become a better leader, a more thoughtful person, a more careful steward of the trust people place in this institution. The conspiracy we faced was designed to tear us apart, but instead, it brought us together and made us stronger.
Oh.
They toasted to integrity, loyalty, and the power of doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. As the evening wore on and the conversation flowed easily, William looked around the table and felt genuinely grateful for these people. They had seen him at his most vulnerable, most suspicious, and most uncertain, and they had stood by him anyway. Later that night, after Catherine and the children were asleep, William stood at the window of his bedroom looking out over the palace grounds. The security lights cast long shadows across the lawns, and somewhere out there, James Mitchell was probably doing his rounds, checking vehicles and scanning for threats. The world kept turning, guards kept watching, and life went on. William thought about Marcus Ashford in prison, about the other conspirators who had lost their careers and their freedom. He felt no satisfaction in their punishment, only a lingering sadness that things had reached that point. He wondered if he could have prevented it somehow, if he had been more attentive or more approachable. But he also knew that some people carried resentments that had nothing to do with how they were actually treated, everything to do with their own internal narrative. He thought about the lessons he had learned, that trust was both essential and risky, that systems and protocols mattered, but could never replace human judgment and courage, that positions of privilege came with responsibilities that extended beyond public duties to include genuine care for the people who supported those duties behind the scenes. Most importantly, he had learned that his family, despite all its complications in history, could unite when faced with real threats. He and Camilla had found common ground. He and his father had deepened their bond. Catherine had been his steady anchor throughout everything, and his children remained blissfully unaware of the storm that had swirled around them, protected by the very security systems that had been strengthened because of the conspiracy. The next morning, William woke early and went for a run through the palace gardens. It was something he did when he needed to clear his head, and the morning air was cool and refreshing. As he ran, he passed several staff members beginning their day. A gardener trimming hedges, a housekeeper opening windows, a security officer changing shifts. He made a point to acknowledge each of them, calling them by name when he knew it, offering a friendly wave when he did not. Some looked surprised, others pleased, and a few simply nodded in acknowledgement. But William knew that these small gestures mattered. They built the culture of respect and recognition that would help prevent future betrayals. When he returned to the palace, sweaty and energized from his run, Catherine was in the kitchen with the children, making breakfast. George was reading at the table, Charlotte was drawing, and Louis was trying to convince his mother to let him eat chocolate for breakfast. It was chaotic and normal and perfect. "Good run?" Catherine asked, handing him a cup of coffee. "Good run," he confirmed, kissing her cheek before ruffling Louis's hair. Everything is good. In that moment it was true. The crisis had passed. The conspirators had been dealt with. Systems had been improved. Relationships had been strengthened. William had emerged from the ordeal not broken or bitter, but wiser and more resolved to lead with integrity. He sat down with his family and ate breakfast, listening to his children's chatter about their plans for the day. Outside the window, James Mitchell was probably finishing his shift, having completed another night of keeping watch over the family he had sworn to protect. Rebecca was likely already at her desk, managing the 1,000 details that went into making royal life function smoothly. Camilla was perhaps having her morning tea, reading the papers and planning her day. They were all connected now, bound together by the shared experience of facing a threat and emerging stronger. The conspiracy that was meant to destroy them had instead revealed the true character of the people involved. The ones with integrity had shown it. The ones with loyalty had proved it. And the ones who sought to profit from betrayal had learned that such schemes carry consequences. William finished his coffee and stood, ready to start another day of duties and responsibilities. But before he left the kitchen, he paused and looked back at his family. Catherine met his eyes and smiled, understanding without words what he was thinking. They had been tested, and they had survived. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with eyes open and guards up, but also with hearts willing to trust those who earned it. The conspiracy was over, but the lessons it taught would shape the monarchy for years to come. And that, William thought, as he headed to his office, was perhaps the only good thing to come from such a dark chapter. They had been forced to examine their vulnerabilities and their values, and they had chosen to strengthen both. The institution would endure, not because it was perfect, but because people like James Mitchell still believed it was worth protecting. As he settled behind his desk, and Rebecca brought in the morning briefing, William felt ready for whatever came next. The crown on his distant horizon seemed less heavy now, the responsibility less daunting. He had learned that leadership was not about being invulnerable or all-knowing. It was about surrounding yourself with people of character, building systems that supported integrity, and having the courage to trust again after being betrayed. The explosive proof found in Camilla's car had changed everything, but not in the way Marcus Ashford had intended. Instead of destroying the royal family, it had forged them into something stronger. And William, the future king, had shown that he could face a crisis with wisdom, compassion, and strength. The story would never be told publicly. The details would remain classified, known only to those who lived through it, but its impact would ripple through the monarchy for generations, shaping policies, relationships, and the very culture of service that defined the institution. And somewhere, in a quiet moment years from now, when King William looked back on his journey to the throne, he would remember the day a royal guard discovered evidence in a hidden compartment. He would remember the fear, the anger, the suspicion, and the eventual triumph of integrity over conspiracy. He would remember, and he would be grateful for the lessons learned in the darkest of times.